Good morning, everyone. Well, at least good morning to those of you in the Western Hemisphere, and on the other side of the world, good afternoon or good night. We are here today, um, Lipedema Wellness Conversations with Gail. That's me, and friends. My friend today is Wanetta Ayers. Is it Ayers or Ayers?
Ayers.
Ayers, from
Probably
Alaska.
it probably is Ayers. Yeah.
But how do you pronounce your name?
I it it probably was Ayers sometime
Yeah. So
long,
Wanetta
way ago.
Ayers. And Wanetta is from Alaska, so it's bright and early, 6 o'clock this morning, and she's here to talk to us and tell us a little bit about her journey. Wanetta, would you like to introduce yourself to our community?
Sure. Hi, Gail. Hi, everyone. Well, as Gail said, my name's Wanetta Ayers, and I live in Anchorage, Alaska. Um, I am born and raised here, and Alaska. Back in the 60s, a lot of medical care and awareness was not really available here. But the first time that I realized I had something going on with um, my body that wasn't the same as everybody else was when I was about 16 years old. And I had a lump at the base of my neck. And that was my first lipoma. I have a companion condition along with lipedema called FML, or familial multiple lipomatosis, which is the delightful experience of hundreds of lipoma all over my body. And fortunately, my lipedema covers a lot of it up.
Oh, that's interesting. So when you talk about lipomas, are they large?
Oh, most of them are, some of I have a very long standing one that I like to call Lumposaurus. um, it's on the inside of my left forearm, and but most of them are reasonably small. But you can distinguish between lipedema and lipoma fairly easily. Lipoma are um, most lipedema is that traditional, what we think of as the pebbly feeling underneath your skin. Lipoma are more distinctive lumps and bumps here and there, and sometimes it may be a little bit hard to distinguish. But I have everything from the Lumposaurus big ones to what I call seed lipoma. Those tend to be around my joints, and which are also interestingly lymph node areas as well. And I've had lots of lipoma excisions over the years. So.
Your lipoma excision. So what you're saying is they go in and take them out.
Yeah, usually it's just an inpatient procedure. Occasionally, I've had more than a few taken out, and we've done those in surgical theaters, but or suites.
So if some of our listeners are listening to this and say, "Oh, maybe that's what I have,"
Mhm.
what medical professional would be able to diagnose the lipomas?
Well, it's it's a little. I mean, most doctors will look at something, a lump or a bump, and dismiss it as a lipoma right away. As my first experience at 16 years old was the family doctor feeling it, saying it's a lipoma, it's nothing, it's benign, it won't hurt you, it won't affect your life, insurance won't pay for it, essentially go away.
Right.
And um, but when you start having hundreds of them, and some of the lipoma can actually develop a blood supply and then become angiolipoma. Those become very painful, much like lipedema when it becomes more advanced and starts to become fibrotic. Um, I have I've seen everybody from like a general surgeon. That's generally who I go to now. A lot of times I'll just see my primary care practitioner, tell her about my concerns, and she'll do a referral to a general surgeon who's at this point he's probably done dozens of them. I was actually looking through some old files, rearranging my office here, and came across my file with all my paperwork from when I saw Dr. Karen Herbst in 2007. And that also included a bunch of excisions that I had done for her, and I sent tissue samples to her. So my general surgeon here in Anchorage had the labs prepare all the samples to send to Dr. Herbst.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when you go to see somebody,
Mm,
um, for the lipomas,
mm,
is there do they treat it differently because you have lipedema? Is there an
mm.
issue with that?
Well, I mean, as a community, we all kind of suffer from the lack of knowledge of the medical community. And in fact, we have to be the ones that educate them. My general practitioner, I've been with her for decades. And matter of fact, I saw her yesterday. And, she's concerned for me, and she'll tell me I don't have to live in pain. Um, but in terms of something that she's treating me for, that doesn't happen. She's treating my overall general health, and um, most doctors, I would say, although I will say she had a new nurse yesterday, and when she went to, do the blood pressure thing, I said, well, I have lipedema. It's very painful, so I'd like you to do it on my forearm. Well, my forearm is full of lipoma. And so, then the options get very narrowed. And then, I did the whole thing, held my hand up here while she was doing it. And my blood pressure came back 154 over 78. And but that's high for me.
Right.
I'm usually in the 120s. And so 78 is typical, but 154 was definitely high. So I don't know. I don't know why it was a little bit higher yesterday, but most people that you go and talk to, you start narrowing down the options because you have FML or lipedema. And I had one gal who I told I didn't want my blood pressure on my upper arm. Younger gal, maybe the first time anybody had ever asked for something different. And she didn't know how to take it with the regular cuff. She only knew how to do it on the machine. And so
Oh, yeah.
you
And
start you start becoming more and more problematic. They don't know what to do with you.
right. They don't know what to do with you. You become, "Oh, no, it's Wanetta."
Boy, this lady's got some problems.
But yet you said that your general practitioner told you you don't have to live in pain.
Yeah, I mean, I've had, definitely some lipoma around my elbow, particularly my left elbow. And again, I mean, the more you learn about the lymph system and the more I think about lipoma excisions, it's like, oh man, even though they're not really going down to that level of the skin typically with the lipoma, it is, I just worry about anybody with a sharp instrument around me anymore. It's like, I don't know. You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I know you don't know what you're doing. So, I don't want you to touch me. But
Yeah. So when you were young, you started with lipomas. When did lipedema
mhm.
cross?
At that age too.
They knew it was you had lipedema?
No, I didn't have an um, I was looking down at my thighs, watching what the skin was doing, and I was looking at my friend Lynn's thighs and seeing that her skin on her thighs didn't do the same thing. And I literally, I mean, it was like it was my first feeling of humiliation, like because what is going on here? Why is this happening? And and I don't even know if they noticed it, but I noticed it. And, you know, I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges with lipedema, and certainly the younger you realize something's going on, you know, I've realized that my entire life history and body dysmorphia from 16 to this very day is related to lipedema, and that's I, I did a functional capacity evaluation with an OT for pre-surgery qualification, and I was giving her my history, and she was asking me questions, and she wasn't being mean or anything, but it was like rapid fire, and she was running through this stuff, and I started crying because I'm a big crybaby. And she said, "Why are you? What are you upset about?" And I said, "Well, you know, I'm just realizing how much, you know, how much lipedema has ruled my life, and I'm only just realizing it right now." You know, the body dysmorphia. I was a severe restricting bulimic at one point in my life. I went through eating disorder programs. I did every diet imaginable. And, you know, some of it, you know, in retrospect, you look back and it's like, man, I was cruel and abusive to my body because I just didn't understand what was going on.
Right. And I know that you've taken some courses, and you've done a lot of work this year, at least this year since I've known you, on trying to love, at least respect, and have a more gentle relationship with your body.
Yeah. Well, you know, I really feel like the body peace work has helped me reconcile a lot of the things that have been very much present in my life. Uh, you know, we were chatting yesterday, Gail. Oh, no, you weren't there yesterday,
I
were you?
wasn't there
Yeah.
yesterday, no.
You know, the thing is that we all have a history. Things have happened to us. We've been dealing with lipedema, uh, sometimes in a very upfront, present way in our lives, but almost always it's an underlying factor in things with our health and consequently with our lives. I mean, I just, I'm, I think the body peace work has been very helpful in me sorting through my personal history and reconciling myself with, um, you know, what Catherine likes to say, it's not your fault. And truly, it's not our fault. Our bodies are predisposed to do this thing. And sometimes you can't be forearmed about it because it's very difficult to know until there's an out. I mean, it's been going on our whole lives, but until it develops to a level where we can start to see the actual symptoms and signs, it's very hard to manage your health in a way, because you just didn't know. But
Right.
that it was there all along, that it was, you know, that it was messing with you all along. I like to say lipedema is messing with me today.
Right. And I hear people talk about flares. They're having a lipedema flare.
Mhm.
And I cannot, in my lifetime, in my brain, I cannot tell when I'm having a flare or when I'm not. I mean, I'm sure I've had a flare. I just don't know if it's just normalized in my life where it's just like, that's who I am today. So, do you experience the quote unquote lipedema flare?
Yeah. So part of my personal history is also that I had gastric bypass surgery. And
Uh,
that's been about 16, 17 years ago now. Um, I weighed almost 430 pounds at that time, and I lost 256 pounds. But it was at a time in my life. First of all, you're losing that large volume of weight off of your body, and there's many, many, many good aspects of it. as my bariatric surgeon liked to say, Wanetta's out of jail. She's enjoying her freedom. And indeed I was. But I was also in my late 40s and I was headed into menopause. And in addition to all of the stored estrogen and the fat that I was flushing out of my system, and then going into menopause. So I was having this huge flush of estrogen, and then my estrogen was declining systemically as well, and that put me into the worst lipedema flare of my life. And it was literally where I had been in control with diet and exercise, and everything was all the numbers were going in the right direction, and all of a sudden nothing I could do. I couldn't restrict my eating enough, I couldn't exercise enough, I couldn't do anything enough to keep the lipedema off. And that is when it just really it just accumulated heavily, particularly on my thighs, the front of my thighs. And so yeah, I like to call it I like to I have a lot of names for lipedema. I like to call it the alien invader. And when I feel like a stabbing, a burning, a poking, I will always like, oh, the aliens are on the march. And right now, I would say I don't, it's not necessarily a flare, but if I have anything that I'm feeling, there's, definite areas of my body where I feel like, ugh, and it's like, how can it possibly be on the march? I'm doing everything. And I'm eating clean. I'm taking my supplements. I'm doing all my conservative measures. I'm going for MLD later today, but I definitely on my flanks for sure right now. Anterior thighs is where most of I feel pain, and when I feel the pain, I feel like it's progressing.
Okay, okay. So then when people talk about a flare, it's not like, a rash. Like, I know, like, a skin issue flare is like, "Ooh, the rash is there and it's burning," but
Mhm.
when you talk about a flare, it's like it's progressing. You
Yeah.
can feel the progression
Yeah.
in your body, and so maybe I have experienced
Mhm.
lipedema flares, I just haven't had the, term and what's happening connected.
Yeah.
Because I can remember when I'm like, when I this summer when I started wearing arm compression, it's because my arms were just so heavy
Mhm.
that I could hardly move them, and they hurt. I
Yeah.
mean, so deep right in here, and
Mhm.
so I could have thought, "Oh, lipedema flare, what do now what's the next step?"
Yeah.
And so maybe that's a good space, and, like, when we educate people, explain to them some terminology that can help them have words to describe what they're going through.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you explaining that because 'cause I've never had the courage to ask somebody, "What do you mean by you're in a lipedema flare right now?" I didn't know what that meant.
Well, and I think a lot of it has to do with you're experiencing inflammation and you have to sort through. For me, a flare is anytime I feel the poke, the pain, the burn, it's like how could I possibly be having inflammation right now? And I have to sit down and think about. I have started logging my food, which I'm loath to do. I hate that whole thing, but I have started logging my food so I can go back and look at, what is it in the last 48 hours or so, maybe, or you know, over even a month period, if I can look back and see what could possibly be contributing to this. But
Mhm.
I tell you, it all starts with what you put in your mouth, and if you're not willing to look at that, it's going to be harder to suss out what's going on in your body.
Right, right, and, we've for so long, we have not I mean, we've most of us have dieted for most of our lives,
Yeah.
right? And not really knowing why we were eating the way we were. we were just eating the way we were told.
Mhm.
And now we're learning why we need to eat certain ways and really take it to heart that we're caring for this amazing, wonderful, lovely body
Mhm.
who we feel has betrayed us. But really, we're in it together.
Mhm.
That our bodies are in it together. Wanetta, I'm going to you opened a nice segue, and we're going to continue to talk about nutrition. But before we do that, I do want to invite our community to a free webinar. So I'm going to put it in the chat, in the comments, just to let everyone know we're having a free webinar on March 4th, which is Saturday. And I'm putting it in here, and then I'm going to pull it up. It's long. So bear with me. It's long. Oh, man, I'm not going to do that one. Anyway, so the free webinar is called, there it is. It's Saturday, March 4th at 4 p.m. Eastern. It's called Kind Keto for Lipedema, Gentle Nutritional Self-Care. And it's by Dr. Leslyn Keith and Siobhan Huggins, who's a research specialist for us. Look in um, the comments, and you'll find a link to click on. You don't have to copy any of this down underneath here. And so we're offering this to you. And Wanetta has been really good to talk about loving, coming the body piece thing. And now she's logging, which so often those of us who have dealt with either dieting or um, eating disorders, the logging feels like it's going to trigger the
Mhm.
dieting mentality or the eating disorder thing again.
Mhm.
So if you decide to log your food, be very careful. Be very have a mindset of this is an experiment and I got to look and see what's happening,
Mhm.
right? Instead of I have to log my food because I've been a bad girl again.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
and you know what? I just I'll add really quickly to that. Like I don't weigh and measure. I'm not counting macros. I'm not doing any of that stuff. I have a clean food list, and I will say just eliminating processed foods was such a I mean, I knew keto worked for me. I knew in general before I started it that it worked for me. But just getting rid of the processed foods, the difference in inflammation and pain in your body is just so profound. It's like, it's just undeniable that it's what you put in your mouth that matters. And you know what just to go back to sort of my timeline, when I experienced that menopausal lipedema flare, and couldn't get back on top of it, couldn't get back, and I really gave up for about a decade. Um,
yeah.
and that changed for me last year. I was just trying to do things that I normally could do, and now don't panic, but that included stuff like getting up on top of a ladder, and
Yeah.
uh, um, but even just simple gardening tasks were becoming a big challenge. And I live in just a 2-story townhouse. I got to the landing one night and was in a lot of pain up that first half of the stairs. Got to the landing and I looked up to the second. I, I am I going to be stuck here on the landing all night? Um, and it shouldn't. I like that way. Mourned. A lot of people have lipedema at that point, but I let it get that far. And in the last year, I've lost about 70 pounds, and doing measures, and like I said, I'm going for MLD later today. All the things for self-care. We were talking on the Body Peace Q&A yesterday that it's like, oh my God, it's a full-time job, this self-care stuff. And I was joking. It's like, I really wish I could hire somebody to do it for me, but I got to do it for myself.
Yeah, what would she be worth? The person who would do it for you, you know,
Oh,
that's the thing, right?
it's like,
Hire
it's
yourself,
like,
Wanetta.
could you do that? Could you do this arm thing for me? Could you? But yeah, for me, it starts before I even get out of bed. I mean, I do a little self MLD. I do the gua sha stuff on my face to start dealing with the puffiness there. And especially when I'm going to be on camera. Um, but I noticed Nancy Lynn had commented that weather seems to affect flares more so than diet. I would say, weather. I definitely feel differences. I live in Alaska, and so we have some weather extremes here, and yeah, but the thing that I find is that I really seriously just cannot function much above 80 degrees. It really affects me. Humidity and high temperatures really, really affect me.
Yeah, see, I always think about weather affecting my knees,
Yeah.
like when it's cold, right? And
Yeah.
I live in Idaho, and right now I walked out last night and we had snow, and I thought, "Ah, that's why my knees have bothered me all day, because it was getting ready to snow." You know? So let me pop this one up also. This
Mm-hmm.
is also, what is I think she meant MLD therapy. Um,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I think, first job is get your food in order. Second job is begin comprehensive decongestive therapy. And that starts with, PT, hopefully trained in manual lymphatic drainage. There's other certifications, CLT or LANA. And manual lymphatic drainage, the first time you have it done, you probably think, what kind of a deal is this? Because it really just feels like gentle touching, but it's really very gentle stretching of your skin in order to stimulate your lymphatic system. And more and more, what I would say is that, um, leaky lymphatics, leaky gut, I think, again, all related to what you eat, is really the root of where lipedema starts. And so you have to, I think, do everything you can to heal your gut. Hopefully, I don't know that there's a lot of proof of this, but hopefully that helps heal your lymphatics as well. And but if you calm down the inflammation in your body, I'm waiting right now on a food sensitivity test result. Just you send in like 5 of your hairs, and they can assess long term what food sensitivities you have. Because I really, again, feel like, going back to the, how could I be having poking and burning and anything else? Is that inflammation in my body? I want to know. I want to get rid of it. I want inflammation down to the lowest possible functional level in my body, because I don't want any more progression. And I can't fight this thing fast enough, unfortunately.
Right, right. Well, and there is a difference between chronic inflammation and acute inflammation.
Mhm.
And so many of us are living in chronic inflammation
Right.
where we're inflamed for a lot all the time. So, so you're waiting on those food sensitivity results,
Mhm.
knowing full well you're going to take a look at it, and then what are you going to do with that information?
I don't know. I've watched so many videos of other people talking about their food sensitivities, and sometimes it comes back being like just a completely random thing. And one woman was talking about that her test came back and said she was sensitive to egg yolks. And I was like, no, I can't be sensitive to egg yolks. I don't think I am. I think I would sense that. But most people come back with like very bizarre things. I'll tell you one that I saw somebody came back with on their test was xanthan gum, and I don't even need a food sensitivity test to tell me that I'm sensitive to xanthan gum. uh, I made the mistake of thinking that I could use xanthan gum to thicken some soups and chilies and things like that I was making. I had to throw out two huge batches of beef stew and chili because I ate one small bowl of the chili with the xanthan gum in it, and oh my god, I was so sick for days, like 3 or 4 days afterwards, sick. And so that all got thrown out. The xanthan gum got thrown out. And, it's just one of the things, again, I think this is like one of the biggest challenges I think that we face with lipedema is that food additives are everywhere. And even in something innocent that you think, oh, that's not a problem, I can have that. But you read the label and it's got dextrose in it, and that's sugar, and it's in everything. Don't eat dextrose. Another thing, simple thing, teas. Sugar is hidden in teas, and so anything that's marked with quote unquote natural flavorings, something that unfortunately our government endorses as a standard for a food ingredient, but food manufacturers can hide sugar in natural flavorings. So we have to be extra careful, and that's why making your own salad dressing or sauces, things like that, is really important.
Yeah, it is, um, having those labels. I remember I used to teach a course a couple years ago. I was teaching a course for Lipedema Simplified with, and I'd tell people, let's take a look at the label. And instead of looking at calories or serving size or anything, the very first thing I have everybody do when I teach them to read a label, let's take a look at these ingredients,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Now, and I wouldn't tell them, now you can't have this, you can't have that. I'd say, oh, look at this. This might be something you make a decision about. Are you going to put that in your body? And it
Hmm.
is extremely difficult because of our food industry.
Yeah.
Um, and so we can only make so many changes
Yeah.
at
Well,
one
yeah, and not to. I mean, I don't know if there's any farm families on the. But I mean, food sensitivities come in all shapes and sizes. I did a 23andMe DNA test a few years ago, and it did come back that I had a celiac sensitivity. That didn't stop me from dosing myself with bread every single day, because I didn't sense that it was. I mean, I was like, okay, in my lived experience, am I gluten intolerant? To me, somebody was gluten intolerant. All my friends that were gluten intolerant were like thin little waif-like things that, and it was like, no, I'm not gluten intolerant. Well, after a year on keto, dose yourself with a little gluten and see what happens. It's unpleasant.
Well,
Um,
saying that, I remember when I first heard about gluten intolerance, my one of my professors at college, um, we were fast friends, and so he had retired and I was off out of school, and we were talking, and I said something about, I'm gluten intolerant. He goes, "Oh, what were your symptoms?" And I
mhm,
said, "My ankles swell from gluten." And he said, "That's not he was adamant, "That's not how gluten, it's all about, digestive." And
mhm,
I said, "But every time I stop eating bread, my ankles stop swelling."
mhm.
He goes, "It's gotta be something else." Well, that was like 15 years ago, right? And now I'm learning maybe it's not the gluten, but it's everything that comes along with the gluten, right?
Mhm,
Right?
mhm.
In that package of bread or that package of wheat. And it's I eat wheat, I'm in pain.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's all this crazy puzzle that you have to figure out. You don't know what the picture looks like in the end. So you really are just piecing things together and tugging on little clues all the time about what is it that my body is doing. I mean, I think it's just I think that genetically we are predisposed to these circumstances. But I really think it all comes down to everybody. I have a friend um, in my neighborhood that is has been going through a very serious liver issue to the point where she was close to liver failure. And when we sit down and talk about comparing notes, it's like we're doing the exact same things. And it's like, okay, so it really all does come down to what we put in our mouths and how our body reacts to it. And we can choose to have our pantry and our refrigerator be our pharmacy or be our, slow poison. Um,
Oh,
and and I don't mean to be overly dramatic about it, but um, when I think about how I ate prior to the last year or so, it's like, you know, everything that I was putting in my mouth was slowly killing me, was slowly leading me to the landing on my stairs where I couldn't lift my leg any higher to get up the stairs.
right,
And you just shouldn't no one should have to get to that point. We have to wake up and take responsibility for the food, because I like to tell everybody there's no magic pill. There literally is no magic pill. I don't care what you do. You can do the Ozempic or any of that other stuff, but you're going to have to do that for the rest of your life. And if you're still putting inflammation into your body through your mouth, um, I don't think any medication is going to continue to work. I think you're going
right,
to have to keep upping the dose. And why not start at the source?
right. And I know you'd always talk about you gotta quit fueling the fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what and that starts with education though. You
Yeah.
have to have knowledge. That's what this is doing to me.
Yeah.
And I've heard people say, I just can't do keto. Keto doesn't work for me. And I hear that and I think, okay, let's take a look at what does work for you,
Mhm.
right? Is what you're doing when you weren't doing keto, was that working for you?
Mhm.
If there's let's take a look and see what does work. And it takes effort. Like you say, it's a full-time job. Takes um diligence.
Mhm.
It takes a team. It's really hard to do by yourself.
Yeah.
And that team could be authors or
Mhm.
videos, or something along those lines. Um, but it does take diligence, and we are all strong.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to somebody about keto a while back, and she said, "But you have to make all your food." And I said, "Well, in the end, I have some go-to things that I know that I can do to go out and eat and that it'll be okay." Um, but uh, I always used to call my sister a food Nazi, um, because she eats very, very, very clean. And it's like, okay, you were right all along. You were right about all of this, because she mostly cooks at home and is very skilled at that. For me, for decades, my way of eating was starve myself for most of the day, be completely stressed out after a long day at work, drive home, 6, 7 o'clock, stop at the grocery store, be so hungry and ravenous that I wanted to eat everything on every aisle, buy what I wanted, come home, eat everything, and and that is between what I was eating, the stress, the pattern of eating, all of those things were just absolutely a recipe for lipedema. Um, and so here my body is predisposed to do that. And everything behaviorally that I was doing. Oh, and then not sleep well.
Right. You have acid reflux all night.
Right, because I'd eaten late, I'd eaten too much, all of the things that are just again, if I sit back and rethink my personal history, it's like, "Oh my god, I mean, I was a volunteer for this." I was doing all the wrong stuff. Now, granted, I didn't have all of the knowledge, but it explains a lot of my personal history. And I wanted to say something because I think Ruth Gah is online,
Ruth Gott
and
is online.
yeah, we had at one point I had talked about we talked about going to doctors and being able to talk to doctors. And one of the things, and I had talked about this in some prior webinar or something.
Right.
Write out your personal history. Do a chronology of your life with lipedema. You've got to write it all out because, first of all, I don't remember everything, but you start writing it all out and like, oh God, I remember when I did that. I mean, what kind of a nut job was I to be doing that? And do the chronology. I also, during the pandemic, I like to write, and I did a couple of stories. The teacher gave us a writing prompt to write about imperfection, and I, sat down and just was like banging on the keyboard, writing about lipedema as an imperfection,
Mm.
and you how it affects you emotionally, socially. Lipedema is not for sissies. you know, you know, uh, you get and I mean, I see younger women getting treatment earlier, a lot of women getting surgery at stage 1 and stage 2, and I am like, hallelujah. That means we're making progress. That means that, I mean, granted, it's not universal across the globe, but at least doctors are starting to see that women are deserving of treatment for a condition that they can't control. And so, anyway, I just think, I really believe that when you go into the doctor's office, you have to inform them. And I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but I can tell you in Anchorage, we're losing doctors. People are leaving the profession. They're moving out of state. We didn't have a big, dense population of medical professionals. If you live anywhere in a rural place, you don't have a lot of choices. So the only thing that we can do is trying to educate the doctors. And I think writing out that chronology, I've done every diet you can imagine. Here's the, I mean, I think all of us have somewhere in our memory banks, I was this weight and I did this thing for this long. You can do that. You can write out that chronology.
Yeah,
And then,
you really can. And what I remember when I did the weight loss chronology for a class, it was a class, it was called When Women Stop Hating Their Bodies,
yeah.
right? And I remember taking the class and I had to write out that chronology
Mhm.
long before I even had the term lipedema. 1,000 pounds. I have lost and gained over my lifetime 1,000 pounds.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's how, and I was in my 40s at that time. I'm in my 60s now. And but here is the thing. Now I understand
Mhm.
where I was.
Yeah.
Now I understand. I've been trying, I mean, we're told it's our fault, but we've worked so hard, right?
Yeah.
And now I understand. Number one, it's not my fault. Simple, what they call simple, or which it's not, but obesity, general obesity is not our fault.
Yeah.
it's all our metabolic and our body's reaction. And I want to say to our food source, to our environment, to our stress levels, to, everything. And each little step that we can take to understand what's going on and use that knowledge,
Yeah.
bring the knowledge to our health professionals.
Right. Right. Well, and the other thing we talked about yesterday on the body piece Q&A, and again, I'll just say, if you guys offer that again, I recommend it to everybody. Is that getting your diagnosis is. I mean, I've been on some of these group chats on Lipedema Simplified programs, and I just want to reach through the screen and grab people and hold on to them and hug them and tell them it's going to be okay, because you can do a lot. You can do so much to help yourself. And I'm not a shrinking violet, and so I have to push. If I have to push on the medical community and the insurance industry, and just push on myself, a little bit every day. I'm going to do it. Like I said, it's not for this. None of this is for sissies. You gotta, but the other thing is imagine if you took a loved one into the doctor and they said, "Oh, you have diabetes. I don't really know much about it, and good luck."
Right.
And, it's like, that doesn't happen. Diabetes is a big money making disease. Cancer, unfortunately, is a big money making disease. And, and until, I suppose, the insurance industry and the medical industry figure out a way to make more money on lipedema, it is going to be up to us to push on it. Hey, you know what? I think today is Rare Disease Day, International Rare Disease Day. And although I don't think of lipedema as a rare disease, I think of it as a rarely diagnosed disease. We still have to push on the awareness piece every single day. Gail, I don't know if you wanted, there's a couple of questions.
I want to first address Kathy Rubio's.
Okay.
This one?
Yeah.
Rubino's. Sorry, Kathy. Yeah. Can you recommend a keto diet specifically for women? I'm going to go ahead and put the link, Kathy, of our webinar. It's called Kind Keto. Mm-hmm. It's this Saturday at 4 Eastern. I'm going to go ahead and put that link in there so you can register for that free webinar. It's by Dr. Leslyn Keith, who is the one who actually said, hey, maybe, just maybe, keto could work for lipedema. And that was in 2011. And so she started looking at that with Catherine Seo. And so she's going to be doing that webinar. We also, and if you would like to, we have a small group coaching coming up starting next week. I'm going to put not a website, email address. Sorry about that. Took me a while to get the word email out of my mouth. An email address, if you are interested in doing small group coaching, or if you're interested in just talking to a nutritionist about how keto helps with lipedema. I'm putting this right here. Her name is Carrie, Carrie, at lipedema-simplified.org. Mm-hmm. She is a nutritionist that focuses on helping the lipedema community find their food sensitivities, create their own nutrition plan. Send her an email, Carrie at lipedema-simplified.org. And she's going to be running our small group coaching next month, or I guess because it's the end of the month now, but the March. And so make sure that you reach out to her, not to take away from anything that Wanetta is saying. Wanetta, you've worked with Carrie or at least talked to her?
I haven't, but Carrie is just such a wealth of information, and she's on a number of the like the support groups and webinars and things that we do. And she was on the Body Piece Q&A yesterday, and yeah, she's a wealth of information. And I just think, it's not one and done on keto and your diet. I think you have to just constantly be, one of the things that I'm constantly looking at is this from the right source? Is it grass fed butter? I mean, is it, from cattle with milk cows with grass fed diets? What's the right meat sources, clean meat sources? I mean, everything that you can do to just continue to really focus on the cleanest possible keto diet that you can get is super important. Um, unfortunately, the one of the bad things about living in Alaska. Well, I mean, last night for dinner I had zoodles with bolognese sauce, but it was made with moose meat, and and that's pretty darn organic, I have to say.
So where'd that moose come from?
He came from an area in interior Alaska that my brother goes hunting in, and
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
it's actually near the Canadian border, but north of Tok, Alaska, and so that's one of the nice things: is salmon and moose meat and some other game meats that are really super clean sources of protein. I can't eat that way every day. My freezer's not full of those things. I'm reliant on other people to share. Um, and we don't have a lot of livestock ranching
Right.
in Alaska, so there's there's some things that we can do, but I mean, just look around you and find good sources. Know who's providing your food is, I think, a really important part of it. And I'm not aware of any, particular keto version that is, women over men, other than men. The recommendations for men tend to be a little bit more in terms of, I don't like thinking about caloric intake. I just eat until I'm satisfied. And again, I don't really weigh or measure anything. And, as I mentioned, I did have gastric bypass, and that's still a tool that's in there, not the, uh, well, the plumbing is different, still different. So it is still a tool that I have, but it's not the same thing as, when you first have bariatric surgery. And I know most people are not doing gastric bypass anymore. They're doing gastric sleeves. I don't really know that process, but, again, there's a level of restriction there that most people aren't going to have. But I'll tell you, I don't know, keto has been just such a blessing for me in terms of addressing the inflammation, addressing the pain. That I think it's worth a try for everybody, no matter how difficult you think it's going to be. You have to do the food planning and the food prep if you can. I'm not great about doing either one of those things. And it's just me, a single person household. If I make a pot of chili, I'm eating chili for a week. I mean, I can freeze some, but I only have so much freezer space too.
Right.
So I have to really be committed to want to eat something. Other than
Mhm.
that, it's usually a lot of like salads with protein on it, or I do eat a lot of eggs. Please, 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 food sensitivity test. Don't come back and tell me I'm
I'm
allergic to eggs.
Oh my gosh, the eggs, I tell people I went carnivore, um, and not I probably cycle out on occasion, is what I call it. Like, there were, I had olives. I really had a lot of olives the other day. They just tasted so good, right? Salty, lots of fat, and I just said, "Okay, I'm gonna just, like, have olives because I'm very carnivore-ish, but I really am an eggivore." So I'm gonna be sad for you, Wanetta, if the egg yolks, because egg whites are no fun.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
so
We've got a couple of questions about yeah.
pick a couple questions, and I'll pop them up on the screen for you.
Okay, well, Cheryl and I think some about supplements, and I'm happy to talk about that a little bit.
Okay, let me
Um,
see.
I I mentioned earlier that I did see Dr. Karen Herbst. It was back in 2007. This was post gastric bypass surgery. And, one of the things after gastric bypass surgery that you are worried about is your absorption rate. I really focused at that time on liquid vitamins and liquid supplements. My routine right now is I take a one dropper of combination mineral supplement in water, and I do take a liquid quercetin, quercetin, I believe it is quercetin, which is one of the supplements that Dr. Herbst recommends. I take I've got them right here. They're poised to go down the hatch soon. I take a what they call a triple strength fish oil, which fish oils are rated by a group called IFOS, and you want a 5-star triple strength fish oil supplement. Again, that's on Dr. Herbst's recommended supplement list. And if you just Google her, Dr. Herbst supplements, you'll find it. Now, let me go back to 2007 when I first saw her. That supplement list has changed a lot over time. And I think it's gotten more focused, more refined. When I first started out, I bought like hundreds of dollars worth of supplements based on that recommended list. And I took them for a couple of years. I was going through my worst flare ever. And my conclusion was these supplements don't do anything. But maybe in the face of that flare, it was a wrong conclusion. It wasn't, stimulus response kind of thing. But I take my fish oil. I take just a Centrum multivitamin. I live in Alaska, so I supplement with vitamin D3 because of lack of sun exposure. And they say if you live anywhere north of Atlanta, you don't get enough sun exposure for D3 development. So anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 additional IUs of vitamin D are recommended. So I actually saw my primary yesterday, and she said, "You're not taking enough D3." So the one thing I will say about D3 is I would recommend breaking it up into 2 doses, one in the morning and then one again, maybe with lunch or after lunch. Don't take it like before bed or anything. That's telling your body to wake up. So don't do that. I take a turmeric supplement, 1,500 mgs, I think it is, or mcgs. So just one. I just take one in the morning. Um, I I take a B12 and a biotin supplement. B12 I've always taken for heart health. I don't have any issues. I have no comorbidities, zero comorbidities. Um, I started taking the biotin because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my hair if I do all these lipectomies that I've been approved for. So I'm doing everything that I can to try and save my hair. So biotin is a part of that. Um, and then the only other one that's unique to Dr. Herbst's list is hesperidin and diosmin, which is just a little white pill. And it's, I believe, I may have this wrong, but I believe that it's from citrus rind, at least the diosmin is. And she's online and she talks about the supplements, and you can go and listen to that. And I lied. I take one more thing. She has recently added to her list lipophilic vitamin C, again related to citrus rind. And I've just recently started taking that. It comes in a packet. It's like a gel. You don't make a solution of it. It's like a little glob of gel that you put in like about an ounce of water and drink down. And again, that's a recent ad for me, but listening to her and thinking about the one thing I would say for everybody, you have to think lipedema is doing some stuff to you, but you have to think in terms of your cells to understand what's going on in your body. And if you really try and understand the at a cellular level what's going on, I think you can get a better grasp on what things like supplements and your food and your hydration are doing. The one area that I know that I absolutely have to still work on is sleep. I'm a terrible, terrible sleeper. Uh, and again, on a cellular level, our bodies need sleep so the little specialized cells can come in and do the garbage cleanup work that they have to do. But I hardly ever give my body a sufficient break to do that work.
Right.
And that's called autophagy. We need to have that.
Right. And to talk about that sleep, that also means to sleep well, we have to not be in digestive mode. So eating late is something that, even though we think, "Oh, I'll have a snack before I go to bed," maybe just, wait and have that snack after you wake up, because
Mm,
our bodies need to get out of the digestive mode and get into the restorative mode so that it can do its work. That's very difficult with our schedules, our stress levels, our families, and all that, all those things. Um, I do wanna say something about to the community about taking supplements.
mhm.
Wanetta mentioned a lot of supplements, and there people you hear people talk about supplements all the time. Please be aware that some supplements and, some medications do not do not go together. So, make sure if you're seeing a practitioner and you're taking medications, that your practitioner knows what supplements you're planning on starting to take, because they either might have to adjust your medications, or they might have to say, take it slow on this supplement until
Yeah,
until we see it. So make sure, and it's the same thing with keto. If you've decided to go keto or low carb or clean your food up, if you decided, okay, I'm going to start eating whole foods instead of packaged foods. Some people call that Mediterranean diet, some people call it the paleo diet, but anything that you're going to start doing that way, talk to your care physician, because if you're taking blood pressure medications and you start keto, your blood pressure is going to drop. So um, you need to be monitored. If you're taking blood sugar medications, glucose medications, and you start going keto, your glucose is going to drop. You need to make sure that you're monitored so that you don't end up tipping over, right? Because if when your blood pressure drops, that's what happens. You drop too. So please, please be conscious, um, of that. Know that when you do a dietary change or when you start supplements, that you might have to have your care physician monitoring things.
yeah, that's excellent advice, Gail. Because again, I am on no medications, none. Well, that's not true. I take a medicated eye drop, um, but I don't ingest any medications at all. And everybody's got complications or other considerations, and I can't I can't know all of the possible interactions or consequences of some of these things. So you all have to take that into your own hands and talk to your doctors about it.
Yes. So, there do you wanna answer one more question and then we'll get off because we've been on for over an hour?
Yeah, sure, sure.
This is one,
Hmm.
have you anyone experienced benefits with CBD, like reduction of pain and or swelling? Have you used CBD?
I haven't, well, other than for my dog. I use CBD for my dog to calm her down. But I know, Gail, you've worked with Brian Howard a lot, and you've personally benefited from that. And I know I've heard from other people. I have a friend that uses CBD for chronic pain in her legs, not related to lipedema, but yeah, I know a lot of people who've benefited from it.
Yeah, and actually they're starting Siobhan Huggins had said that she found that anytime she took anything that had CBD in it or she used CBD, that she peed a lot, and she started researching because she's our research
Yeah.
specialist. She started researching, and she said that, there was one sentence in one paper she read that said that CBD might help with lymphatic flow, right? So, she's gonna do more research in that. Our community, um, we have a CBD consultant with Lipedema Simplified, and he's starting to put together, he's starting to collect information about how it has helped with chronic pain. I use it on I use a salve on my feet, and I use a CBD to, help me sleep, and I, have found that I need to be careful on what's in my CBD, just like we have to be careful with everything, right? And so the CBD that I use is organic, it's got all the stuff on the label, it's full spectrum. We do have, what we call fireside chats or pain clinics where Brian explains how to select the best CBD you possibly can select. So you need to keep track of it because I'll have him on this broadcast also. So if you want to find out more about it, you can just go through our recordings of this either on YouTube or on Facebook.
And he's
So
got a really cool accent to listen to too.
yeah,
So
he's from Boston. He's from
yeah,
Boston, he had a hard time opening a jaw.
ja.
Jaw. He's he is, and I'll tell you, he's a retired, chemical engineer,
Mm,
so he really enjoys getting in there and digging around in the chemistry portion of it. But he also and he wouldn't be upset if I said that. He is recovering alcoholic.
mm,
He's been sober for 35 years. He doesn't put anything into his body that might cause, that might be what he calls mind altering, but that
mm.
might be addictive or any of that stuff. He's very clear on that this is CBD, it's not THC and those sorts of things. So, anyway, we're off the Wanetta topic, but Wanetta, before we go,
Huh.
um, if you had one message you wanted to echo around the world, what would it be?
Um, that your pantry and your refrigerator are your best medicine as long as you are consciously choosing good food sources, and really just it all starts with the food. If you don't control the food in the right way, if you don't make the right food choices, you're just adding to the fire in your body. And that's the thing that we all have to do, is really get a handle on that inflammation.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Wanetta, for being with us today and helping all of us know that number one, there is hope, and number two, we're not alone. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.